Get ready for the next battle.
Going somewhere? You're finished.
There are things possible with Unreal Engine 5 that weren't possible with Unreal Engine 4, and how was it to develop with Unreal Engine 5 for the first time?
You were just saying that Tekken is kind of like a unique way of using the Unreal Engine. 7 was that way too for Unreal Engine 4, but this time as well that it's mostly used to display the graphics. So the actual base of the game, the way the animations are displayed, the actual gameplay mechanics, etc., all rely on our own scripting and programming. So it's mainly used to kind of achieve that the graphics. And what we're able to do, obviously, with UE5 is that right away you can get a very high level of graphics, the kind of quality that people expect from the new generation of hardware. And you're able to do it quite quickly and iterate. So it makes it easier on that front. But that said, there was a lot of changes because in the past when you had kind of like evolution of the quality from the engine side of it, it was more about like the quality of the textures or increase in polygons or things like this, right? But the biggest change he noticed this time was it seems like most game companies can achieve a high level of quality regarding the textures that they use or the shaders or those kind of basic components. What's really kind of sets them apart this time for this generation and also UE5 is the lighting. And that's been a very difficult thing for us to fine-tune. Even the build that you have here today, you had hands-on with, I believe. We're not very happy with the state of the graphics at the moment. We think we can do better. And one of the things that's been difficult is the lighting. This is what really changes among the developers in different games. It's not like in real world where you can just throw a bunch of lights and it will affect everything around it, right? The games have more pinpointed locations of lights that can only affect this one object or this one character or this one area. And fine-tuning that has been very difficult because you've seen we have different stages in the game, right? So maybe we get the characters to look exactly like we want them to in one particular stage, but when they go to another stage, it's totally different and they don't look like we want them to, and you have to do the fine-tuning of placement of individual lights, etc. So that's been one thing that we'll probably continue fine-tuning until the release of the game. It's been difficult this time around.
Tekken has an amazing cast of characters, and already from my point of view, I imagine it being very hard to decide which one are going to be in the next game. So you can't make everyone happy, of course, but I think you want to bring on new people, but you want to bring back fan favorites. How do you decide which characters are in the game, and how do you try to make as many people as possible happy?
That's something actually the fans always ask. They have a lot of interest in how we choose. Like you said, there's been so many characters if you look at the life of the franchise, maybe close to 80 if you include all of them like Miharu and Slim Bob and everything we've done so far, right? But we don't think that everyone will want 80 characters in a fighting game that they have to learn to fight against, etc. It's quite difficult. So we have a limited number to start with, and we have to choose wisely. So several things that we think of when we do that. The most obvious one is popularity. And how do you measure popularity? Well, one would be how often they're used. Is it a very popular character that people pick to play? And then there's also marketing. Maybe we want to appeal to a certain country or a certain community. Maybe we choose a character that kind of represents them. But then also from the development standpoint, there's various things. The story for a particular installment, what kind of story do we want to portray? There's going to be certain characters that we need to do that, right? And then there's also what makes it like Tekken. So there's like the explosiveness of Paul, or maybe you need a pro wrestler like King from the start, or maybe animals or something that when people think Tekken, this is what they need. So these a variety of different factors that go into choosing the initial cast with the limited number of spaces we have from the start.
Are fun modes coming back, like Tekken, bowling, etc.?
So he was saying that unfortunately we can't really talk about anything outside of the presentation for the most part. What we can say is that we had Tekken 7 in various modes and various content and the overall volume, right? So it's not like we're going to have less things than we had in Tekken 7. Obviously, we're trying to improve on and expand what we've done. So we understand what people are expecting from the game, and we hope that we can answer that at a later date.
I feel like in recent years it's become a bit more popular to regenerate health by being aggressive in a game. And I was wondering if that's something you witnessed as well, and that might have influenced in some way, or where this, where it came from to have this element in this particular game.
As you can tell from our question, we didn't really that didn't influence the decision. So now that you gave us the example, you're right. It does have that in the action game, but it's quite different in the fact that in that instance, it's a one-player game where the player is playing against CPU opponents, and that it's one way of balancing it, right? To kind of fine-tune the difficulty in how you do that. Where for our game, it's against most often a human opponent. So the way the mechanics works out with recoverable gauge is quite different than those kind of one-player experiences. So we didn't really take that in mind when we were designing it for this one.
So I want to ask about the roots of the series, because fighting games and Tekken got their start in the arcades back in the 90s, and now Tekken 8 is, I think, the first Tekken game that does not come out as an arcade game first.
That's right.
So how does that change your development approach, your approach to balancing, and is it always maybe a bit of an end of an era for gaming and for Tekken to switch completely from the arcades to the home console?
Correct. That this is the first time. We haven't really made it a big marketing or PR beat, but like you say, it's the first time that Tekken is going to be out on the console first. This has drastically changed the way that we developed the series. It used to be, and you're probably familiar with it, that we would release arcade version and maybe several versions where you release the basic gameplay and the mechanics. And then after that's been out for a while, we're able to then add other modes and content that people expect from a console game. So that itself is huge. This time we made a concerted effort to do it on console first so that everyone worldwide gets their hands on the game at the same time. But at the same time, creating that base game from scratch, but then all of the other content that people expect, all at the same time to release on the consoles and also PC, is a huge challenge for us.
Tekken 7 was hugely successful with 10 million sold copies. I think it's one of the most sold games of the series, right? The most. Very surprised that this was the case, and did it influence the development of Tekken 8 in some way that the part 7 was that successful?
Yeah, it is a big milestone for us that Tekken 7 sold so many copies of the game, 10 million, right? Because it finally eclipsed Tekken 3, which was the pinnacle that people loved about the series, and that was always the most selling installment ever. So we were somewhat surprised that it happened, but at one point after we released 7, we kind of saw it would happen. Maybe 2 years after we released, it just kept selling and people were still playing the game. And it led us believe that the way people enjoy entertainment, not just games but entertainment in general, has shifted. That even you see with TV that you have more seasons of everyone's favorite shows because people want to interact with their favorite thing for much longer. And so we've seen that with Tekken 7. But honestly, Harada, he kind of hoped it would stop with maybe 8 million copies because, and asked why, is it because of development resources or whatever? And he said, no, it's because the company's goals that they place on our employees, that's him, that's me, that's everyone on the team, right? That you have to go farther than the previous one. So if we sell 10 million copies, that's huge. And if we sell 10 million next time for 8, then they'll just, okay, well, you did the same. That's whatever, you know? So he feels sorry for especially some of the new staff who joined for Tekken 7, because then the next time for 8, they have a huge goal that they have to get just to have an average like rating internally, right? So it's a lot of pressure for 8.
Tekken 7 was released 1 year after the original PlayStation VR was released, and it featured a VR mode on PlayStation 4. I'm not expecting that you announce a VR mode for Tekken 8 right now in this interview, but what lesson did you learn from the VR stuff you had in this game, and did you consider maybe already making a VR mode for Tekken 8 as well?
Yeah. Saying that the VR mode that you mentioned in Tekken is that way too, but he also very early on did Summer Lesson, which is another PlayStation VR title. So he's interested in the VR as a platform, but it's kind of hard to gather feedback on that portion of Tekken 7 VR, because we did multi-platform, obviously PC, Xbox, PlayStation, but only a certain segment of our audience that bought Tekken 7 had that hardware available to them. So, and if you think about worldwide as well, it seems like we only got very limited feedback from a certain group of people, and so it's really hard to tell, how was it, and what should we do better or different or anything like that for Tekken. So he was saying if he were to revisit VR for Tekken, he would like to get a better idea of a worldwide fan base and what they would want from something like that.
Can you go into detail with the thought process behind guest characters? Like, have you ever considered a guest character that is really out of place, having a weapon, a sword or a gun, usually in the original game, that wouldn't work with the series?
So, guest characters just in general. So the thinking behind it is, first and foremost, we have to focus on our Tekken roster, because that's what people really want us to do in the Tekken game. So it's about timing, that once we've covered that basis, then maybe the timing where we want to give something that people weren't expecting or some kind of new form of excitement was the thinking of the guest characters. So that's the general overall thought of it. But if you're asking about specific instances, we thought that we wanted to do something and it didn't match the game or whatever, we remembered when we were just talking about it now. He said personally, Colonel Sanders, KFC was something that he wanted to do, and he brought it up so often. But for various reasons, a lot of people said no, whether that's internally or whatever. I said no, but but also certain politicians that were very visible at the time, that we were jokingly, if we could put them in the game, we could do so many entertaining things with them, but there's no way that they would ever let us do that. There's a few examples of that, but we can't say who it was.
A question about the all all the game really, but the heat system I was thinking initially because it adds a lot to the game on a psychological and a tactical level as well. What I was wondering is where it came from, where everything came from. When did you simply want to make Tekken 8 more exciting, or what were you thinking when you looked at people playing Tekken 7 and you felt like was missing, and you thought needed in the next game?
So regarding the thinking behind the heat system, it's really a way of implementing the aggressive nature that we talked about. But what this easy for anyone to understand why this is needed is like sports. If you look at sports or like maybe even boxing or some kind of a real fighting event, if the two, we'll say boxing just for an example, if the two of them are so evenly matched that they're just going back and forth and no one's really doing any critical damage, they're highly skilled, but it's not very entertaining from that perspective, right? From a viewership's perspective. It's much more interesting, and you can see that people love it when something, they're maybe evenly matched, but then some particular instant where there was a mistake or something and one person capitalizes on it, and then the match just goes one-sided from there and changes in an instant. That's really thrilling for people to watch. And maybe even for people playing as well, we think, rather than just back and forth with not much progress throughout the match. And since fighting games tend to be kind of defensive in nature a lot of times because you can block all the damage, we really felt that adding these kind of moments throughout a particular match where something drastic could happen makes it exciting for both people playing and for watching. And the way we chose to make this happen was implementation of the heat mechanics.
Okay, so I would like to talk a little bit about modern tech right now. So between Tekken 7 and Tekken 8, of course, a lot of new things were developed. You have a new engine now, and things like ray tracing are all the rage now. So are you, for example, using ray tracing effects for reflections in the water, for the light, or for reflective character surfaces? And also, in the same vein, of course, right now AI is a big subject. So would AI in any way help you develop a game like Tekken in terms of backgrounds, designs, textures, or whatever? So, and also, what is your opinion about AI?
The first part of the answer will be that we can't talk about anything like that in relation to anything for Tekken 8, but just this is Harada's thoughts on those two topics. Is ray tracing, that since it's kind of like a popular newer technology that a lot of people are talking about, but it's not like using it is always the best option. For example, what he's talking about is it depends on the game. If it's something like a battle game where it's a large open field and there's puddles on the field and the player's going really slowly because looking for enemies, maybe it's really effective use of the reflections. It's something actually developers have been wanting for a long time, that it automatically calculates the necessary information to do the reflections and things like that. So it sounds awesome. It's something they want to use for a long time, but it's not very good at quick moving games and fighting games. Not only are the players moving around very quickly, but the camera's rotating very quickly, etc. So maybe it's not the best way because although it's very resource intensive for the engine, memory, etc., it doesn't really make the player go, "Oh my God, that's amazing!" a lot of times. So maybe there's better ways to achieve more impactful graphics in certain instances. So it's not always like ray tracing is the best answer. So we're thinking of other ways to do that are more appropriate for our game in particular. Regarding AI, it's interesting. It's again a very popular thing that people are looking forward to, but it's like, how do you use it? If it's going to debug our game for us and maybe it'll tell us where all the 2-byte spaces are in the game, but just telling us isn't enough. It's like, well, if you can find it, we want you to fix it too. Or maybe we ask ChatGPT to make a really cool Tekken concept document or something. There's all kinds of funny things that perhaps you could dream about, but currently, who knows? It's maybe more realistically, if it's something that improves the experience of the player by changing the difficulty of a CPU opponent on the fly, or some kind of method that makes the game experience better for the player in the background, is maybe a more near-term thing that could happen. Yeah.